Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're diving into the life of the Marquis de Lafayette. Everyone knows the name, but I think we're going to find that his life is a lot more than just, a name in a history book.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, just looking at the sources we've got here, we have historical accounts, personal letters, even some pretty funny anecdotes. And it's really fascinating to see how they all come together, to see how they paint a picture of a man who was more than just a revolutionary icon, but actually like a really captivating personality.
Well, and that's what I love about these deep dives, right? It's like we get to peek behind the curtain. We get to see these figures as people.
Yeah.
So Lafayette, born into the French nobility. You think he'd be content with a life of luxury, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why rock the boat?
You'd think so, right? But something lit a fire in him. He yearned for something more. And at just 19 years old, he decides to set sail for America to join the fight for independence.
That's incredible. I mean, talk about a life-changing decision.
Yeah.
But before we get to the revolution, you mentioned seasickness. And I got to ask, what's the story there?
Oh, okay, this is a good one. So Lafayette, he gets terribly seasick. And on his first voyage across the Atlantic, he was so miserable, he wrote, "The sea is dismal, and we make it still more dismal." And you can just imagine this young aristocrat clinging to the mast of the ship, just desperately trying to feel better.
That's wild. I mean, it's almost comical to picture. Did he really think that, that hugging a mast would help?
It didn't. But, what's really remarkable is that he actually crossed the Atlantic 7 more times, so 8 in total. And each time he knew he would endure this same misery, but he did it anyway for the sake of his ideals. So that really says something about his commitment, right?
Wow. Talk about dedication. Okay, so he finally arrives in America, ready to fight for liberty. What were those early experiences like for him as a soldier?
Well, his first battle, it was certainly memorable, but maybe not for the reasons you'd expect. Okay, picture this. Lafayette, he's eager to prove himself, charges into the woods, and he runs straight into a tree.
What? He ran to a tree?
Yeah, he ran right into a tree. And so his men help him up. They're brushing off the dirt, and he looks at him and goes, "The first attack is always the most difficult, particularly when it is on a tree."
That's hilarious. I love it. He really knew how to find humor in the most unexpected situations.
Exactly. And it's just a small anecdote, but it reveals a lot about his character, right? He didn't take himself too seriously. Even in the heat of battle, he kept his sense of humor. And I think that ability to laugh at himself really helped him connect with the soldiers under his command.
Oh, absolutely. It makes him much more relatable, even all these centuries later. But his wit wasn't just limited to the battlefield, was it?
Oh, definitely not. There's this great story about a masked ball he attended back in France.
Ooh, a masked ball. Tell me more.
Okay, so Lafayette, never one to shy away from a bold statement. He approaches King Louis VIII, who was known for his incredible memory. And he says to him, "A good memory is only necessary for those who are incapable of thinking."
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine the king was too pleased with that.
You can say that again. Lafayette's friends tried to smooth things over, saying, "Oh, he didn't realize who he was talking to because of the masks and maybe the wine." And
Oh, okay. That's pretty weak. Did he go along with it?
Not at all. He insisted that he knew exactly who he was talking to and refused to apologize. He stood by his words even if it meant offending the king.
I love that. That takes guts. It shows he really was committed to his beliefs. But speaking of powerful figures, we got to talk about his relationship with George Washington.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, their bond was really unique. When they first met, Lafayette, ever the playful one, asked Washington, "Are you the commander because you are the tallest man in the army?"
I love that. It's kind of cheeky, but you can just sense the admiration, right?
Exactly. And despite the age difference and their different backgrounds, they developed this really deep affection for each other. It wasn't just like a military alliance, it was a true friendship.
It's amazing to think about these two guys from such different worlds coming together like that. And they even became family, didn't they? Lafayette named his son George Washington Lafayette.
He did. And Washington considered Lafayette like, an adopted son. They exchanged countless letters, visited each other's homes, and stayed close throughout their lives. So it's a testament to the power of shared ideals and mutual respect to forge that kind of bond,
It really is. And didn't Lafayette give Washington a pretty special gift at some point, a pair of pistols?
You have a good memory. Yes, he gifted Washington with a beautifully decorated set of pistols during one of his visits to Mount Vernon.
Those must have been treasured.
Uh,
But knowing Lafayette, I can't help but wonder if if he gave the pistols with one of his signature witty remarks.
oh, you know him too well. As Washington was admiring the pistols, Lafayette quipped, "Perhaps now the British generals will be even more frightened to hear that you are the one holding them."
Always with the jokes.
Yeah.
It's remarkable how he, managed to find levity in the midst of war and revolution. But speaking of revolution, we can't forget Lafayette's role in the French Revolution, which, was obviously heavily influenced by his time in America.
Absolutely. The American Revolution had a huge impact on Lafayette's thinking. He saw firsthand the power of democratic ideals, and the fight for liberty, and he took those lessons back to France with him.
And that's where the famous story about the key to the Bastille comes in, right?
Exactly. So when Lafayette ordered the demolition of the Bastille, that symbol of French despotism, he sent the key to Washington. It was like this gesture of friendship and solidarity.
That's incredible. It's like a physical representation of the connection between the two revolutions.
Yeah, it is. And the letter he sent with the key is pretty powerful, too. He wrote, "My gift to you, my dear general, is the key to the fortress of despotism, a symbol of what we have managed to demolish and what we must rebuild many times over."
Wow. He wasn't just fighting for freedom. He was fighting for a better world, a world built on, liberty and equality. It's amazing to think about how his time in America really shaped his vision for France.
It really is, and that leads us to Lafayette's leadership during those really turbulent early years of the French Revolution. He had to try to navigate this complex and very often dangerous political landscape. He was constantly working to keep things under control and prevent violence, even if it meant putting himself at risk.
That sounds incredibly challenging. I'm definitely eager to hear more about his role in the French Revolution. But for now, I think we should pause here, and we'll pick up this incredible story in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the life of the Marquis de Lafayette. When we left off, he was facing all those, immense challenges of the French Revolution, a movement that was deeply shaped by his own experiences in America.
Yeah, it's crazy how history, comes full circle like that. He goes to America to fight for liberty, and those same ideals then ignite a revolution back in France.
Exactly. But, revolutions are rarely smooth sailing. And Lafayette found himself in the middle of this political whirlwind, trying to balance his ideals with the reality of this often violent situation.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that he was constantly working to maintain order and prevent violence. Do you have any specific examples that illustrate this?
So one of the most dramatic events of the early French Revolution was the March on Versailles in October 1789. Thousands of Parisians, mostly women, marched to the palace demanding bread and protesting the high cost of living.
That must have been so intense. How did Lafayette, as commander of the National Guard, handle this?
Well, he was literally caught in the middle, trying to prevent a clash between the angry crowds and the royal family. He spent the entire night negotiating, calming people down, and trying to restore some kind of order.
Wow. I can't even imagine the exhaustion. Did he ever get to rest?
Well, there's this funny story about that. So after, a long night of preventing violence and, trying to get things back under control, he finally gets, a few hours of sleep. And later, when his friends are teasing him about sleeping through such a critical event, he says, "While I sleep, you dream of riots, so I prefer to be awake or at least asleep."
Oh man, classic Lafayette. Always with the with the jokes. But I imagine that his constant efforts to maintain peace, didn't always make him popular, did they?
That's right. The French Revolution was a time of really intense political upheaval, with all these shifting alliances and these radical factions vying for power. And Lafayette often found himself walking this tightrope, trying to uphold his principles, while also navigating this really treacherous political landscape.
Yeah, he's a hero of the American Revolution, but his role in the French Revolution is a lot more complicated, right?
Yeah, definitely. He was criticized from both sides. Some thought that he was too moderate, not radical enough in his push for change. And others thought that he was, too attached to the monarchy, not fully embracing the principles of a republic.
Wow, that's amazing how one man can be seen as both a hero and a traitor, depending on who you ask.
It's it really speaks to the complexities of revolutions, right? It's things are rarely black and white. There are always these competing interests, these conflicting ideologies, and just these difficult choices that have to be made. And Lafayette was right in the middle of all of that.
So how did he navigate all of that? I mean, how did he reconcile his ideals with with the reality of revolutionary politics?
Well, one way he did this was through his role in drafting the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. This document was inspired by the American Declaration of Independence, and it laid out those fundamental principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity that became the cornerstone of the French Revolution.
So he was trying to shape the course of the revolution, trying to steer it towards a more just and equitable society.
Right. He truly believed in those ideals of the revolution, but he also recognized the dangers of extremism and mob rule. He wanted a republic based on reason, order, and individual rights, not one ruled by terror and violence.
So it sounds like he was constantly battling on multiple fronts, against external enemies, internal factions, and even the tide of popular opinion.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. He was fighting for his vision of a better France, even as the revolution itself, was threatening to spin out of control, and his struggles, really highlight the challenges of translating these lofty ideals into practical realities.
It's it's a good reminder that revolutions aren't just about these grand pronouncements and dramatic events, but about the messy, complicated work of actually building a new society.
Yeah, and it's a process that rarely goes according to plan. There are setbacks, compromises, and unintended consequences. And Lafayette, had to deal with all of that as he tried to guide the French Revolution towards a more just and equitable future.
This is incredibly insightful. It's giving me a whole new perspective on Lafayette's complexities. But you mentioned earlier about his difficult relationship with the press.
Oh, yes. His relationship with the media was, let's just say, turbulent. You see, Lafayette was, a man of action, a leader who thrived on the battlefield and in the halls of power.
Yeah, but the press, they operate on a different time scale. They want those, those instant answers, those immediate reactions, those sensational stories.
Exactly. And Lafayette, with his focus on, long-term goals and strategic thinking, often clashed with the media's demand for, instant gratification.
So this clash of, personalities and priorities led to some friction.
You could say that. He was often frustrated by what he saw as the media's tendency to sensationalize events, to focus on, personalities rather than principles, and to undermine his efforts to keep things, orderly and stable.
So, do you have any specific examples of this friction?
Well, there's one incident that I think really captures this dynamic. So a Swiss newspaper, they accidentally published Lafayette's obituary, prematurely declaring him dead.
Oh, no. How did he react to that?
Well, he was, obviously annoyed, but he responded with his typical wit. He said, "The doctor they consulted seems to be more familiar with my afterlife than with my current state of health."
Always with the wit. Even when faced with these false reports of his own death, he couldn't resist a good jab at the press.
It's another example of his ability to use humor as a shield, as a way to deflect criticism and maintain a sense of control in a chaotic situation.
Yeah, it's fascinating how his personality really shines through in these anecdotes. But before we get too carried away with Lafayette's wit and charm, let's not forget that he was also a man who faced these immense challenges and made these really difficult choices.
You're absolutely right, and those choices, especially during the French Revolution, had a big impact on his life and his legacy.
It sounds like we're about to delve into some even deeper waters, but I think for now we should pause here and we'll continue our exploration of Lafayette's this complex and captivating journey in the final part of our deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive into the life of the Marquis de Lafayette. It's been quite a journey so far, from those battlefields over in America all the way to those, tumultuous streets of revolutionary Paris.
Yeah, it really has. And as we, delve into those later years of his life, we see how those experiences, how they shaped his character and his legacy.
Yeah, you mentioned before the break that his choices during the French Revolution had a profound impact on his life. What do you mean by that?
So as the revolution went on, it became increasingly radical. The monarchy was abolished, Louis XVI was executed, and then, came the Reign of Terror, period of intense political violence.
That was a pretty dark period in French history. How did Lafayette navigate those dangerous times?
He tried to stay true to his principles, to advocate for moderation and restraint, but he found himself more and more isolated, increasingly at odds with those more radical factions.
So his popularity started to fade.
Yeah, exactly. Some people saw him as too moderate,
Right.
too attached to the old ways, not really embracing that revolutionary spirit. And as the political climate became more hostile, he eventually fled France.
That's that's kind of sad to think that a man who dedicated his life to fighting for liberty ended up being forced into exile.
Yeah, it is. But even in exile, he kept championing the cause of freedom. He spoke out against tyranny, and he remained a symbol of hope for those who still believed in a better future.
So despite those setbacks and disappointments, he never gave up on his ideals.
Right. And that unwavering commitment to his principles, that's one of the things that makes him so compelling. He wasn't perfect, obviously. I mean, he made mistakes, but he always tried to live up to his ideals, even when it cost him.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that standing up for what you believe in isn't always easy, and it doesn't always lead to victory right away. But it's still a fight worth having.
Absolutely, and ultimately, Lafayette's legacy is it's a testament to that enduring power of those ideals. He may have faced exile and setbacks, but his contributions to both the American and French revolutions, they really helped to shape the course of history.
And even in his final days, that wit and humor never left him. You mentioned a really poignant anecdote about a conversation he had with his doctor.
Oh, yeah. So just a couple of days before he died, his doctor told him, "Sir, we are responsible for your health, your family, friends, and the entire French nation need you."
Wow. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone.
It is. But, Lafayette, true to form, responded with a bit of humor and resignation. He said, "Yes, I am the father of a whole nation as long as nobody listens to me."
That's it's both funny and sad at the same time. I mean, it's it's an acknowledgement of his legacy, but also maybe a little bit of sadness that his vision for France hadn't fully been realized.
Yeah, that's a great observation. But despite those challenges and disappointments, he never lost faith in the power of human progress, and his life story. It continues to inspire people around the world to fight for liberty, equality, and fraternity.
It really is amazing to think how one man's life can have such a lasting impact on the world. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the life of the Marquis de Lafayette, what are some key takeaways for our listeners? What can we learn from his extraordinary journey?
Well, I think one of the most important lessons is the power of individual action. Lafayette was just one man, but his decision to join the American Revolution at such a young age, it had a ripple effect that changed the course of history. It shows that even ordinary people can make a difference.
Yeah, and he also reminds us that standing up for what you believe in often requires courage and resilience. He faced setbacks, exile, even imprisonment, but he never wavered in his commitment to his ideals.
And finally, I think his story, highlights how important humor and perspective are, even in the face of adversity. He never lost his ability to laugh at himself, to find joy in the midst of chaos, and to maintain hope even in the darkest of times.
It's been an incredible journey exploring the life and legacy of this remarkable figure. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. And for our listeners, we leave you with this. How do you see Lafayette's values reflected in the world today? What causes ignite your passion? And how can you, in your own way, contribute to building a more just and equitable world? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop fighting for what you believe in.